Today, we're going to untangle two legal concepts that, believe it or not, shape pretty much everything around us, from the phone in your hand to the actual ground beneath your feet. We're talking about property law versus land law.
So let's start with a little riddle. What in the world connects your all-time favorite song, a brand new app you just can't live without, and that nice little park at the end of your street? On the surface, they seem totally unrelated, right?
Well, it turns out the answer is they're all considered forms of property in the eyes of the law. And that one little connection, it pulls back the curtain on this huge, fascinating world of rules and rights that decides who owns what, and, just as importantly, what they can do with it. All right, let's kick things off with the big one. I want you to think of property law as this giant, all-encompassing umbrella. It's basically the master rulebook for anything and everything you could possibly own. And what's really wild is just how broad this is. Property law isn't just about the stuff you can physically touch, like a book or a car. It also covers what we call intangible assets, things you can't physically hold, like a brilliant idea, a company's brand, or a piece of music. It's all about the rules for owning it, using it, and passing it on. You know, this whole idea of ownership isn't new at all. It's been evolving for thousands of years. The ancient Romans had incredibly detailed rules about property. Fast forward to the feudal era, and ownership was basically all in the hands of kings and nobles. It really took the Industrial Revolution to shake things up and create the modern laws we see today, which were written down specifically to protect the rights of everyday individuals. So what kind of stuff are we talking about under this big umbrella? Well, a whole lot. It covers your intellectual property, think patents and copyrights. It covers the buying and selling of homes. It covers the contracts for leases and mortgages. And of course, it covers all your movable stuff, your car, your furniture, your laptop, you name it. Okay, so we've got this massive umbrella of property law, right? Now, let's zoom in on one very specific, very important slice of it, land law. You can think of this as a specialized chapter in that giant rule book that is dedicated only to the land itself. This is where we get super focused. Land law is all about what we call immovable assets, basically the land and anything permanently attached to it, like buildings. Its main job is to regulate how that land is owned, how it can be used, what can be built on it, that's zoning, and how it's developed over time. And trust me, this affects you every single day. Ever wonder why you can't just build a giant factory in the middle of a quiet residential neighborhood? That's land law in action, specifically zoning rules. It also manages things like how farmland is used, puts environmental protections in place, and stops people from just building on land that doesn't belong to them. All right, it's time for the main event. We've seen both sides, so now let's put them side by side to really nail down the key differences between them. So here's the bottom line. Property law has a massive, broad scope. It covers everything from a song to a car to a house. But land law, it's laser-focused only on the land and the buildings on it. And their purpose is different too. Property law is mostly about protecting your right to own something, while land law is more about regulating how that land is used, often for the greater public good. If you're going to remember just one thing from all this, let it be this quote. It really sums it all up. Property law is the big, overarching category. Land law is just one very important piece of it. So, think of it this way. All land law is a form of property law, but not all property law is about land. Okay, so who cares, right? Why does any of this actually matter in your day-to-day life? Well, it matters a lot because these invisible rules are constantly shaping everything, from the gadgets you use to the very design of the city you live in. Let's look at some real-world examples. Say you invent a cool new product. Property law has your back. It gives you a patent, so no one can steal your idea. Now picture your city deciding to build a new park. That's land law, which handles the zoning to make it happen. When you buy a house, the transaction itself falls under property law. But if the government needs to acquire that land for a new highway, it's land law that makes sure the original owners get fair compensation. And that last point about fair compensation, it is so, so important. A great example of this is from India, where the Right to Fair Compensation Act was passed back in 2013. This is a really powerful piece of land law designed to protect communities and make sure they're treated fairly when their land is needed for big development projects. All right, let's boil this all down to a super simple two-step takeaway you can remember. Step 1, when you're thinking about owning any kind of asset, ideas, objects, buildings, you're in the world of property law. Step 2, when you're thinking specifically about the ground itself, how it's used and what's built on it, that's land law. Simple as that.
And I want to leave you with a little something to chew on. We've been talking about physical dirt and grass this whole time, but as virtual worlds and the metaverse get bigger, people are buying and selling digital land. So here's the question. What will land law even mean in a future where the ground beneath our feet isn't even real? Something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.